Hi, welcome to Kitty Witty Papercraft. My name is Amy, and in this video I have a flip through of this Valentine-themed junk journal. So today is Tuesday, but this will be available in my Etsy shop this Saturday, February 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to do a restock in my Etsy shop with lots of Valentine items. This will be the only journal that I have in my shop for Valentine's Day. I was hoping to make a few more journals, but this one took me quite a while to make, so I am not going to have time to make any more journals. I will have some ephemera packs, and I will have some tassels similar to this one in my shop, and some die cut packs, but this will be the only journal. So I chose this Little Red Riding Hood cover. I always like to look for Little Red Riding Hood for Valentine's journals, obviously because of the red. But what I love about this cover is it also has pops of blue and yellow in it because of her eye color and her hair color. And a lot of vintage Valentines have bits of blue and yellow in them, and you'll see in the scrapbook papers that I chose inside there's lots of this same shade of blue. It's just like this really beautiful sapphire blue. So I chose this cover for this Valentine journal, and I just added some trims here, including this like glitter that is the same color as her eyes, that like sapphire blue, so it's a little sparkly there. And the spine is a 1.25 inch spine covered in fabric. And the back is also covered in fabric in this really sweet vintage reproduction print fabric. I thought was so cute, and it has lots of that blue in there. So you'll see a lot of blue along with red and pink and white and the traditional Valentine colors. There is a tassel on here that has lots of Valentine charms. Let me see if I can kind of get a better view for you here. Yeah, so just like lots of hearts and pink and red charms, and a couple fun little candy charms, this little chocolate charm, and this little, looks like a little bag of candy, and this little gumball machine that has little heart candies in it. And like I said, lots of pinks and reds and hearts on the charm tassel there. So inside, so this journal has lots of scrapbook papers and vintage book pages and lots of ephemera inside of it. The scrapbook papers are all like really high quality Valentine themed papers from Authentique, and I used a couple of different Valentine collections that they had out over the last couple of years for this journal. And I like using these really nice premium scrapbook papers in my journals because they're really sturdy and they're great pages if you like to do a lot of embellishing or if you like to add photos. They're really sturdy and will hold up to that. And then in addition, there's lots of vintage ledger papers in here and vintage book pages. So oh, and also the ephemera throughout. There's lots of vintage ephemera. And then I used a lot of printables from KB and Friends. I know you guys have heard me talk about her shop many, many times. I've been using her printables in my journals since the beginning, really. So I used, I think every printable in here is either from her shop or from my personal collection of images. I have a few things in here that I had saved on my computer and I've added to the journal. So I will point those out as I go through. And on the inside covers, I used vintage gift wrap, Valentine gift wrap from Norcross. They made really, really beautiful gift wrap. So the inside covers have that on there. And the spine is covered in vintage cotton sheeting fabric. And then I always like to put rickrack between the seam, between the paper and the spine fabric. And this time I added also a little glitter ribbon, just for a little sparkle, a little extra color. Since it's Valentine's Day, wanted to add a little bit of sparkle. So yeah, like here's the first thing from KB and Friends. So if you saw my Christmas junk journal, she had in her Christmas collections this year these vintage reproduction images of boxes that would have been used for Christmas ornaments. So they would have like a little window. So the printables just have this like dark area inside. And in the Christmas one, I cut out that dark area and just made it a window. And I did, and put tulle over the window so I could make it into a shaker. So I did the same thing with these, a few of the Valentine card boxes. Sorry, I can't find my words today. So I love these. I love these so much. I love these little boxes that she's doing in her shop. So they really make fun little shakers. So that is what I did with that one there. And this is one of the printables from my collection. I have quite a few authentic Valentines in here, but I also have a couple printed Valentine images, and this is one of them. This is a little flashcard from KB and Friends. And this here that you can see, that is the edge of this heart trim on this page. And I just kind of made this into like a little tuck spot with a vintage bridge score card. And this is a a vintage Valentine. This one doesn't have any writing on the back. Some of them do not have any writing on the back. Some of them have a name on them, which I think is really kind of sweet. I love, love, love these little banners. There's a whole bunch of different ones in the Valentine collections that KB and Friends did this year. And I may have a couple Valentines from her Valentine collections from last year in here, but a lot of them are from this current year, and I love these so much. And I just paper clipped them in. I don't think I stuck anything down on any of the pages, so there's always that flexibility to just take pieces out and move them around and use them however you like in your journal. This is another printable, this sweet little game board. I think that would make a really cute little background. And this is a envelope. You might have seen I did a little tutorial showing you how to take a heart-shaped doily and turn it into a little envelope. And this just has a little felt heart inside of it. This is a printable from my collection. And this little bag has some ephemera and a journaling card from KB and Friends. I think that one is from last year's Valentine collection. And this is one of my favorite images. This is from my personal collection. And I think in every Valentine journal I've made, I've included this image. This one, and there's an elephant, the same little elephant that's on this bottle cap charm right here. These two are my favorite images for Valentine's. Oh, that just popped out. So yeah, I included that in here. This is a pocket here, and let's just guest check. This is a vintage Valentine. It has a little name on the back. Isn't that sweet? I love that. Another one of the little banners, and a vintage, just cut out from a vintage gardening book. And this pom-pom trim. Most of the trims in here are vintage trims. The pom-pom is not. This is vintage Denison labels and a vintage large milk cap and that little doily envelope. I turned this little piggy bank like journaling card into, I just notched it out so it looks kind of reminiscent of a bank. And then I took this vintage snap fastener card and just made it like a little tag with some ribbons on it. Vintage ledger paper. There's a few pieces of really pretty vintage stationery in here. This is another one of those really pretty banners and a vintage church offering envelope. And inside I have some vintage seals. These are Denison Valentine seals. And I know there's 3 of them in here. Yeah, this little hot air balloon and the little cherub and the little kids. Those are my favorite seals. Valentine's Day. I will put all the stuff back later. And then there's some vintage buttons and a little heart charm on this bulb pin here. And then a chenille pocket. And this is just a fun printable. And this flashcard I thought was nice with this card here. Both sides of it have colors that coordinate with this really pretty vintage card. It's got little satin bows on it. This is a vintage, it's like a really neat material, like parchment envelope. Just this little felt clip, and a vintage recipe card, some raffle tickets. This is a die cut, so there's a couple die cuts in here, more than a couple, a few from Pretty Little Studio, and a little price tag. This is a vintage place card. This is a page from this Little Red Riding Hood book, and this is from a golden magazine, vintage golden magazine. And in the middle here, I have a page from one of my sewing pattern counter catalogs. And this one I just closed up and turned it into a pocket because the inside illustrations really didn't go with Valentine colors at all. That's a little die cut from Pretty Little Studio. I will have die cut packs that include those images in my shop this Saturday also. Vintage label. This is a sweet little postcard image. KB and Friends, of course. These are also KB and Friends. This is the other end of that envelope, and I just put a pink gingham doily on here. So just as a little decorative element. And then I closed in this side of that card, and it's just a pocket. And this is a vintage index card with a little die cut on top and just some ribbons that I added to it. And that's kind of fun because the ribbons peek out of the edge of the book there. And then this is another envelope made from a doily. It's just filled with all kinds of ephemera, vintage jukebox. If you consider 80s vintage, that's 80s vintage. A label and some tags. This is a Pretty Little Studio die cut. This is from KB and Friends current collection. And in this one, I took one of her Valentine, the KB and Friends Valentine reproduction box tops, and just turned it into a pocket. And there's vintage tickets and a vintage postcard, lots of space on there to journal. Vintage coaster, and this is a scrap of vintage wedding gift wrap. Thought that was appropriate for a Valentine junk journal. Another page from this book. A Betty Crocker vintage recipe card. This is a vintage Valentine. That one does not have a name on the back of it. This is a printable of a Valentine, just one of my favorites. And this is a vintage tally card, and it still has the yarn on it, which is really fun. And in my Christmas junk journal, you might have seen I turned this into like a little mini junk journal, so you could do that with it, or you could just journal right inside of it. And a Kismet vintage score sheet, some tickets. Those are fun to use to just embellish. You can tear these apart and use them to add embellishments to your photos and your pages. This is a magazine called Pack of Fun. This is another one of those really pretty vintage stationery papers I have. This is a pocket. So all the pockets have various things inside. This one has a couple die cuts along with the guest check and library card. Actually, this is a printable from KB and Friends. This is a Pretty Little Studio die cut. This is another one of my favorite Valentine images. That's a printable I attached, and then I just slipped all of these papers underneath. I left the underneath of this open. This is a vintage Disneyland playing card. That's from 1950 something. I forget the date. This is one of those Valentine box, reproduction images, and this black area, you can write on it. You can use a white gel pen that works really nicely on the black. Of course, you could add, something on top that you stick down, either a photo or just some kind of words, phrases or something like that you could put on there. and I just cut out that black area and made it a window. So you could use that for a shaker. Pride and Prejudice, my favorite romantic love story, page from that in here. And this vintage filler paper is really big. Lots of space to journal on. This folds out in a kind of neat tri-fold way. This is a vintage Valentine here. This little cat. This skate rental tickets, vintage milk cap. All of that's vintage. This is a neat, some stationery. I have the envelopes and I have some paper from this Avenue Motel. That's kind of neat. Just have a printable there from good old KB and Friends. And over here, this is another box top image from KB and Friends, and another one of my favorite Valentine images, just kind of tucked in there. Some more ephemera that you can use, just kind of move it around in the book wherever you want to embellish a page. This is also from KB and Friends. You can tell I really like her stuff. Her style just matches mine perfectly. I love how this person's name is erased and there's another name down there. I'm not sure what happened there. Like, that one's really sweet. This is a magazine from 1960. It had a neat romantic image on it. There's some more of that vintage stationery. And this bag has some printables in it. Vintage money. There's another one of those little box top journaling cards. Love this shade of pink. This is just a little embellishment, and this little die cut. This is a vintage bingo card. This is from Pretty Little Studio. And this pocket's made from vintage fabric with these little strawberries on them that are raised. They're like kind of velvet feeling. So I thought that was kind of fun for this pocket here. There is a journaling card, library card. This tag has some vintage fabrics and some of that glitter ribbon that I used on the front cover in it. And this is my other really favorite Valentine image, this little calico elephant, and I just made him into a little tuck spot there. And that brings us to the end. So thank you so much for checking this out. As I said, this will be in my Etsy shop on Saturday. I usually do my restocks on Sundays, but because this Sunday is Super Bowl, I moved it to Saturday. So Saturday, February 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I think that's all I have to share with you. Thank you for checking this out. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you guys real soon.